track wrestling here at the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum with Gary Mayabb, manager of Greco-Roman programs for USA Wrestling. We're at Mike Duroe's celebration of life. We were talking a little bit off camera, but for our audience, can you share the story how you met Mike?
Mike Haggerty and myself were coaching together, and then I went on to Kansas City. Then we came back for an event that we were throwing for USA Wrestling there in Warrensburg at Central Missouri State. And we're putting mats away, and Hag comes down and says, "Hey, go get your clothes and let's get a workout." And I'm like, "Hag, we got to get these mats moving." He says, "No, we can do this later." So we're on a time crunch, but I go get the shoes on and walk upstairs, and there's a guy standing there. Hag says, "We're going to get a little drill in." So we kind of clap hands, start drilling, we get going. And it goes pretty hard, and all of a sudden, it's the fur's really flying, and we go from drill to live to, and it's a three-way go, but it's hard. And I'm watching him go with Hag, I'm going with him, and then when all the dust settled, he sits down and starts pulling his shoes off, and then I'm Mike Duroe, and it was a lifetime friendship after that. I mean, it was, it's just the way he was. Just like that first time you ever meet him. I mean, he a warrior on and just so gracious off, and a lifetime friendship developed, and our paths always crossed, just like yours and I. We do all the time at events, and then had the beautiful opportunity to have two of the wrestlers that wrestled for me in high school. Came up for him and wrestled, and both of them ended up being national finalists, Division III, and he did so much for them and with them, and he just took them to another level, and that's who Mike Duroe was. And so we miss him all the time, and I don't know. There's so many things you could say about this man, but at the end of the day, he was, like they said in there, he was a mentor to so many, and I think that's the best word. I mean, not just a coach, not just a great friend, but a mentor. So
I was going to ask you, what did you appreciate most about your friendship with him?
Well, just he was on all the time. He's on all. He's a friend. He's a friend on. He's on it. When he'd reach out to you, there was things you could call him about to ask him a question. Every time you ran into him, you always had a question for him, and he had one for you. And so there was that link, and there was that person you could bounce ideas off, because you knew that he was just that warrior, and he was a warrior with a code, and he passed that code on to so many. And I just, watching him work and watching people walk up to him, you can always tell what he's given to other people by how they walked up on him. So we're gonna miss that.
We're a couple weeks out from World Championships, a couple weeks after it. Imagine the evaluation period, if it hasn't started already for you guys, is coming up pretty soon. What are your takeaways from what transpired with the Greco program to this point this year, with U23 still yet to come?
You're right, U23s is coming up on us. I know that we've got a camp up at Northern coming up pretty quick. And you're right, what we've been doing is breaking down some stuff right now and looking at, try to get some of the answers. But the neatest thing about it, I would say, is that these last 3 months of getting these last three teams ready to go, cadet, junior, and even going back to U15, but really cadet and junior and then senior, what a pleasurable drive. These guys were all in, and they were totally sold on advancing their craft. And so for that, I just want to take a moment right now and say thank you to them, to all the athletes, their coaches, and the dedication and the rise up that they are trying to create and working with us on. And we just can't thank them enough. I mean, without them, there's nothing anyway. But now there'll come a time where we will sit down here 15th of November in that area, and we'll start that process down, and then we're going to take and really work individually with each person to try to work through the process of what it's going to look like to come up on Pan Am qualifier, because obviously we got to go for 6 there, and and what that process looks for each one of them, and the people down the ladder, and then what this is going to look like. You know, who's going to Texas on the 21st, and then what it looks like between now and then what that next step will be for each of them. So we're going to work out some individualized periodizations for them, but a lot of it's going to be reflected back on what we just got through going through at the evaluations. So,
what were the general thoughts coming out in Ursultan?
Well, obviously, you know, when you don't get what you were after, then there's always that sting. Getting past that and looking at some of the positives that happened, you know, the positives were that we were not having some of the same problems that we were having in parterre down. And John Stefanowicz, I mean, he stops the guy that had the most lifts at Euros this year and ends up winning the tournament. He stops him not once but 3 times and 3 trips down. And that right there was in itself something that I don't know that we had been doing as well in the past. And so that's just one example. And then obviously what Max did and some others, and we're seeing things that these guys are working on and their coaches are working on, and then we're seeing them come out there and work. Now, do we have a ton of work to do? Absolutely, the challenge is very large, but we're starting to see some of that. So we're very happy about that part of it.
What will the rest of 2019 look like for you?
Most of it's going to be spent in those areas. Another thing that's going to be spent in is that this is a huge year for us coming up in 2020 with developmental age group. I mean, U15s, working more with them, identifying them. You know, we had a little taste of that last year. Now we want to expand on that because that's going to make a difference in our cadet program. The cadets themselves, getting those guys ranked in, and then hopefully finding a way to put the 1, 2s, and 3s together more often in common workout environments. And that's going to take some work on everybody's part. The success that we had at juniors, we got to understand some of those things that was working. Now we've got to increase those numbers of opportunities for those guys as well. So across the board, huge year in 2020 to try to bring some of those things to fruition.
About a month ago, we lost James Johnson, a pillar of the Greco program. What did he mean to USA Greco?
Well, I mean, he is that guy. He's the guy that whatever was on tap, then he's that guy that's tapped into it because he's on it. And so much of it is the stuff that we don't know about, right? This is stuff where he's making calls into Europe and getting training sessions set up, and then making a call and saying, "Hey, I got this done. You want to get another guy in there?" Yeah, let's go. I mean, those are the things that there are people that follow you, and then there's people that run either right alongside you or just in front of you. And, you know, today was one of those tough days. I mean, we're here obviously celebrating Mike Duroe's life, and in the middle of it, Matt Lindland is in North Carolina today for James Johnson's funeral. And his visitation was yesterday. So, you know, shooting text out to people today and wishing it was one of those days where we could be in 2 places at one time, and you just couldn't do it. So obviously Coach Frazier's here, and myself, and then Mike Clayton from USA Wrestling, but you know, we've got other people in North Carolina today as well for the exact same purpose. I mean, 2 men that made a difference in our sport across all lines, really. And but James Johnson and what he's meant to our Greco program over the years, and being one of those big men anchors of the program as an athlete, and then went on. There wasn't anywhere we could go in the world that this guy didn't either have a connection or have a relationship with somebody that could make a difference in what we were doing. Whether it was setting up a training session, or just recently we were in Budapest, and there was an issue with the hotel. And next thing you know, he brings in somebody, and the issue goes away. So, you know, it was you know, somebody was trying to say that we owed more money or something on this. And it was like, no, we hadn't stayed then. But we couldn't get anybody to identify that. And then James Johnson, one conversation, everything's good. So those are the kinds of things that he could open up doors, because the relationships that he built, just like Mike Duroe, everywhere they went, they left a footprint. And they left a handshake and probably putting their arms around somebody. And I know that several of the members that we have on our current team would not be where they're at without James Johnson. So he is another one. I'm so happy that you brought that up, because I think that's, today is one of those days where we're going to honor two people that really made a difference in international wrestling for USA.
Hey, thanks so much, Gary. Anything else for us?
No, I'm just excited for, again, when you come into this environment and you see all of the history that we have, and you think about, and just, you run into a few young athletes in that room tonight that are going to be in this place one of these days. So that's our job, right? And to do the work that, I just wrote a note to a good friend of mine that's going to take over for Coach Johnson, and he's going to do a great job. And so we're super excited about that. And I think that down the road, he's built on that same crux that these two men are. So we're just excited and thankful, so thankful for these two lives that we honored today.